And welcome back, Fourth and Long fans. It's your footy correspondent, Coach Donnie Hess here, back with another AFLW round review. Round 3 has come. It has gone. We got to discuss it before round 4 starts in just mere hours from when we record. And as always, I got to have a co-host. My co-host today of the Chicks Talking Footy podcast, which, as I've told many people, I love this podcast. It's so awesome. And thankfully, it is back on my podcast. Miss Sasha Doherty. Sasha, how are you doing?
Hey, I am great. Looking forward to round 4 coming up. And yeah, like you said, it's Friday afternoon for us when it happens. So very exciting.
All righty. And it's even closer hours for you coming up. So really quickly, before we go into the game review, just your quick thoughts on what happened in round 3.
Well, round 3 was an interesting one. I think we saw our first draw of the season, which was a very exciting match between Carlton and Port Adelaide, which, yeah, probably one of my favourite ones of the season so far. Yeah, we see the new teams coming in and trying extremely hard to develop their skills and getting there to a degree. We saw a bit of rough and tumble from Taylor Harris in Melbourne, and we know the outcome of those decisions for being fined for rough conduct and whatnot. So yeah, there was a lot going on, Donnie.
Yeah, a little bit of everything, a little bit of close game, a little bit of blowout, and a little bit of draw. So let's roll up our sleeves and let's take a real quick look at these 9 games. Again, I love saying 9, all 18 teams in there. It
I
always makes me
know.
smile saying all 9 games. So we jump right in. Friday night footy, Western Bulldogs, Fremantle Dockers. I'll be honest, I went into this game thoroughly terrified that the Dockers would have another stumble and the Doggies would get a big win, but thankfully, the Fremantle Dockers came to play. Really good game. Doggies still get the win by 3, 23-20. And I'm loving the Doggies game right now. I was a little worried losing Bonnie Too Good, but they've played really, really well. And another fantastic game by Christy Lamb.
Yeah, she was a standout for that game. 23 disposals, 6 marks, 5 tackles. She's such a great player, and I'm really glad they managed to hold on to her in the trade period. And looks like she's pretty happy where she is at the Doggies. But yeah, like you said, it was a good contested game as well. Freo actually, yeah, despite coming and having to play a late Friday afternoon game, which was a bit frustrating for fans to get there. Overall, yeah, with Ellie Blackburn and Kirsty Lamb, you really can't go wrong.
Yeah, definitely. That's such an anchor. I mean, Haley Miller did everything that she could. I think it's glad to see Kiera Bowers getting back to herself. I think she came down with COVID just before the season started, and you could tell in those first couple of games, she was Kiera Bowers, but she wasn't Kiera Bauer, shall we say. So
Yeah,
so it's
yeah.
great to see her back to her tackling, big possession type of game. So I love seeing that because it's always great to have a full-fledged turbo in the competition. We jump to the next game over in Adelaide as the Adelaide Crows, again, another tight one, taking down the Roos 630-16, a 14-point win by the Crows. Crowies are getting the wins, but they're doing it by the skin of their teeth a few of these times.
Yeah, I think they probably are struggling with obviously the loss of Owen Phillips going to Port. They would have had to definitely rejig things through pre-season, and obviously Chelsea Randall's taken the helm quite easily. You've got Ash Woodland, Abby Ballard, but yeah, they're getting there, but not as confidently and comfortably as they used to. So that's an interesting change in dynamic, I think.
Yeah, and the crazy and the thing is it's not without Ebony Marinoff and Ann Hatcher not having
Yeah,
fantastic games. I mean, they both played absolutely out of their minds, but there's just something a little bit off with the Crows. I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it. It's not that they're playing bad. It's just I think we're so used to the dominant Crows, the Crows team that they seemed always just a step above everybody, that this year it's interesting to see them kind of back a little bit closer to the pack. So I'm interested to see as their season goes on, do they kind of find their mojo a little bit? Or is this kind of what we're going to see this year? Like, is it going to be a Crows team that has to kind of win a lot of tough games? Almost a little bit like what Collingwood is having to do a little bit in the men's this season, is winning a lot of tough games, but maybe that might actually benefit them come later on in the season. I'll pull the Band-Aid off now. Here it is.
mm,
My Swannies, They get the SCG, which I thought was absolutely fantastic. I thought it was
Yeah,
an incredible game.
fantastic.
It was great to see the ladies on there, but GWS, I mean, just were too good. 65-18, 47-point win. I'll put my Swans hat on really quickly and go through
Yeah,
it.
go for it.
Again, I thought the ladies played very well structurally. I thought they were much better. Each week they seemed to get a little bit more structurally sound. You can just
Mm,
kind of tell that they played a team that had several preseasons together. They've played a lot more with each other. And then when you have, I mean, absolute fantastic like Zoe Goldsmother, Cora Staunton again at her excellent best, and Nicola Barr, I think,
yeah.
also had really good games. You just ran into a little bit of an avalanche. You just ran into a little bit of an avalanche. But I'm also I'll put my regular coach's hat back on. You got to admit, GWS lost a lot from the previous game. Tate Mackerel was out. They had a couple other injuries. And you worried a little bit that maybe they were susceptible to a young, hungry Swans team. And they just, I mean, they put it away quickly, and it was never really a comp after the second quarter. So well done to the GWS Giants again. I think playing a little bit more up to what I think we thought. And maybe is this new game style starting to see some bearing some fruit, shall we say, for later on in the season?
Yeah, well, GWS, they were in that position that Sydney were in, what, 4 or 5 seasons ago. They were
Mm-hmm.
the newcomers, and they struggled. They struggled on the scoreboard, and they struggled to gel. And here we are, seventh season, same players stuck through. So they've got a really good cohort. Cora Staunton and Nicola Barr. You can't go wrong. Alicia Eva, obviously, and Alice Parker. So there's these strong names, and Pepper Randall, until unfortunately, has been injured as well. So
Mm-hmm.
strong side. And their tactic has always been to come out early and put points on the board, because from watching and experience of looking at them, they're not the best team at coming from behind wins and putting teams away later. It's got to be done early on. So yeah, the Swannies, shouldn't be disheartened though. They've got some really talented young players, and like you said earlier off air, there's a couple of newbies that are really good, and they might come back in this week. So they've got nothing to be ashamed of at all. The scoreboard doesn't reflect how they're playing.
Yeah, I completely agree. And the funny thing is I looked at their disposals, and their disposals are relatively even. They don't have one like
Mm.
25 disposals and then all the rest have 9 or 10. It's 12, 11, 10, 10, 11, 8, 9. I mean, a lot of very even distribution of disposals. So it's not like they have that one superstar that gets a ton of disposals. So I got to admit, I'm liking it. Lauren Seghetti, I love her game. She's that bull in the midfield. I love seeing her to go. Like I said, I'm hoping, crossing my fingers, we get Montana Ham back for this game against Port,
Yes, yes.
because she was electric against St. Kilda. Though the few times she did get the footy, I loved her game and the practice matches that I saw. So I'm hoping she's back. I really, really do. But I just don't want to rush her back. So if she needs another week,
No.
I'm perfectly okay with that. But if she's back, I will be thanking it, because I think it's an incredible game to come back against Port in I think, a very good competitive game. So going
Yeah.
from
I
competitive,
will say,
go ahead.
just with Montana Ham, she was in the NAB under 18 league that, commentated and watched her throughout that season earlier in this year. And I did make a note in my book that she would be drafted, if not number one, very not long after. And her skills there, she's playing well above her age. Like, she's an incredible player, and wonderful get for the Swannies.
Yeah, I remember I had a chat with Alicia Newman from the Swans, and I asked her about it, and she's like, what she can already do at 18 is
Mm.
ridiculous. She
That
and
just shows, yeah.
well, and her
Sorry.
height too. She defies her height a little bit. You'd think she'd be that tall marking forward, almost like Taylor Harris, but she's great at her.
Mm.
She's great at her feet. She's so smooth with the ball. I remember in a practice match, she slipped a hand pass between two Pies players. That, I mean, there couldn't have been much more than the footy size space there, and she hit it perfectly. So I cannot wait to see this young woman grow. Everything that I hear, that she is an absolute wonder to work with. She's like a sponge with Coach Gowan. So I can't wait to watch her grow. But I don't want to rush back. I want it to where she's
No, yeah,
100%
yeah.
fit, because she's the future. Her, Sophia Hurley, and Cynthia Hamilton have been absolutely. I mean, I've loved watching all three of those young ladies play. Unfortunately,
Mm,
I think Cynthia might be out for this week. She might be in concussion protocol after
yeah,
bouncing off the
yeah.
knee of Alicia Eva, and I felt so bad. I saw pictures. She's got a
Mm,
nice black eye, unfortunately. So, we'll get
yeah.
off Swans TV. We'll jump back into this. And I said competitive game, and boy, was this a good one. I'm loving seeing this. Geelong Cats, Collingwood Magpies down at GMHBA. The Pies get a big 4-point win over the Cats. But I am loving watching the Cats play. Maybe it's just me. I'm loving watching their games. They're tough, they're physical, but they're competitive. So much fun to watch these Cats play. Another tight one. Don't come on top of it. Pies keep rolling, but the Cats, man, I am loving their game right now.
Yeah, look, they're like a different side to what they were last season. They don't seem as flat. They do seem hungry and aggressive in a positive way, if that makes sense. Like they're more hungry for that win. And I think having Georgie Prespakis on their side has certainly lifted spirits, as well as, you've got Neens, and there's a lot of confident players that have been through the seasons with the Cats now, and they're ready to get some wins on the board. And yeah, they didn't get there, especially at home, which would have hurt, but there was definitely signs that they could rattle a few cages later in the season.
Yeah, they're definitely a tough side. The one thing that'd be frustrating for their coaching staff is that 1-5 score line.
Yeah.
You got to put it between the big sticks. Collingwood they get the 2-3, so they get the win. So I think that's the one thing that's got to be frustrating for some of these AFLW coaches is how many big behinds
Mm,
totals that some of these teams are kicking. It's scary to think in the next game. Unfortunately, we'll discuss this just a little bit as well. But
yes, yeah.
it is a little and I know that a lot of these kicks are under pressure, so it's not as simple as, hey, it's this is easy, just kick it between the big sticks. I mean, it's not that simple. It really,
No,
really
I
isn't.
mean, from your couch, it looks simple, and everyone's like, everyone becomes an expert. We do in everything we watch. But yeah, I think as a forward, playing, even at the community level, it's a stressful situation. The pressure's on, and
Mhm,
sometimes it's funny that you can miss those ones directly out the front, but you'll get
mhm.
some random, crazy, amazing kick on the corner of your boot or something. Like it's so unpredictable, and I think that just comes down to practice and training and knowing the ground that you're on and the wind, and there's all these little elements that play a part. But yeah, I think by the time they get to the end of this season, hopefully there'll be more goals and points on that scoreboard.
Yeah, and I think it's gonna come. It'll come. It's really early in the AFLW. It's only seven. We're only 6 and 3 games in,
Mm,
so I'm not gonna worry about it. I think the progression is fantastic, but that's a completely different discussion here. We jump to the next game, and we'll pull your band-aid off, Sasha. I hate to say it.
yeah,
The Q
no, that's all
Clash was
right.
not kind to your beloved Suns, 82-9 to 73-point lead. And are we looking at the flag favorite in the Brisbane Lions? Because this is ridiculous, the scores that they are putting up this year.
Yeah, look, they are an extremely strong side. They always have been. It was never, as much as I love the Suns, it was never going to be a competition that I was confident the Suns would win, mainly just because of the experience on one side compared to the other. Um, yeah, they're just in such good form, and I mean, I don't know what's happening over there, and we've spoken about it on our podcast as well. Is it the fact that they've really stuck together? Not, there was a big move from a few players probably three or 4 years ago,
Mhm.
and since then there hasn't been huge amounts of players leaving, and there must be something said for that. So
Yeah, and it was really interesting that I know Coach Starcevich before the expansion period started, he had expressed how frustrated he was. And I remember saying in my preseason thing, I go, I wonder if he regrets those comments a little bit because he didn't lose
mm,
anybody. Like it was kind of interesting. Like I think he was trying to protect himself from the potential of maybe somehow losing an Emily Bates or a Jess Wardlaw or a Courtney Hodder, like some of his superstar players, and they all stayed. So it was very fascinating to see him kind of go, oh, okay. So I thought that was fascinating myself. Again, this is such a good Brisbane Lions team. I think most
it
people that
is.
came through it at the start of the year thought there's three teams that are most likely going to be the flag contenders: your Adelaide's, your Brisbane's, and your Melbourne's. Brisbane is sure as shooting. They're putting their flag in the ground that they are legitimately going to be one of the most difficult teams this season, and I'm looking forward to their matchup this week. We'll talk about that just in a little bit. We jump
Mm,
to it. We already talked about it. The draw. Carlton, Port
yeah,
Adelaide, 27-27, both 4-3. I loved this game. I know it was a draw.
yeah.
I know it was fantastic. I
Mm,
absolutely love this game because the best part about a draw is that you don't have one team sitting back holding to keep the lead. If they're both drawn, they're both going for it. And that last 5 minutes was fantastic. The desperation, the attack on the footy was fantastic. What were your thoughts on this?
yeah, I mean, exciting game, and yeah, like I said earlier, one of my favourites of the round, if not the season. Oh, look, for me, it was, yeah, there's moments where I guess it was heartbreaking when, Lily Goss's shot from 50 metres almost. That was a huge kick, unfortunately, fell short,
Mm-hmm.
which, could have been their opportunity to move forward. But yeah, it was a scrambling last 3 minutes. Everyone's footy just went up a notch. Karen Pedersen was insanely good for the side. Probably one of the best games I've seen her play in a really long time. Some of the stats from her, which I wrote down, 21 touches, gained 401 meters, 8 intercepts plus a goal. Like 8 intercepts is just fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she was fantastic for them, and then on the other side, Hannah Ewing showing why she was one of those
Yes.
top picks. She was absolutely fantastic. In fact, I'll say this. On Twitter yesterday, I put out my team of the week, which we
Yeah.
kind of discussed pre-thing, and I had a Port Adelaide fan ask me, "How come Hannah Ewing's isn't there?" And I went, "Well, I wanted to get her in. I thought she had a fantastic game, but if you
Yeah,
look at
yeah,
the
she did.
midfield that I put together, who do you take out that she
Yeah.
played better than?" So and we'll discuss that here in a little bit. But I mean, she had a great game. She had a week where I just couldn't get her in because there were just so many good performances in front of her. But again, I thought she was fantastic. They showed why she was one of the best South Australian 18-year-olds, and she's going to prove it. I cannot wait to continue to see that young lady grow and mature. So we jump to the
No,
next
it's
one.
true. Yeah.
Jump to the next one, down to our ESA Park as the St. Kilda Saints just fall short to the Melbourne Demons 46-20, 26-point win. The D's get the win, but as you said, a little downer is the fact is they have two players that will now be suspended for their big upcoming game this round.
Yeah, look, it was a rough game, and they're obviously in the Saints home ground down at RC Park. But God, what a competition and what a really good matchup there was as well. I mean, disappointing that, yeah, a couple of demons, Harris included, is excluded because of, some tackling. I think it was rough conduct on a tackle.
Mhm. Yep.
Um,
Her and Jordan Ivey are both out.
yeah, which will definitely contribute to this coming round, which we'll discuss. But you've really got to put it to the Saints really did try and get ahead. They, Katie Shearlaw had a fantastic game up forward. Probably her best season so far in that area, I would say.
Mhm.
She's been really thriving with the Saints. But yeah, D's, they're just so good. Um, they're so well oiled as well.
Yeah, they're just very stable. They're not flashy. They just get the
Mm,
job done. They don't need to overwhelm you. They're so solid in every area. Their midfield has so many talented. Their forwards are talented. Their defenders are talented. It is hard to find a weakness in this D's team. So this week's matchup against Brisbane, I'm thoroughly looking forward to. But again, it does take a little bit of downfall with both Jordan Ivey and Harris being out. But we'll preview that game here in a little bit. But
mm.
I love the D's. I think the D's were my preseason favorite. I think the way they're structured, I think they're going to give tons of people headaches. I'm really looking forward to seeing their defense versus Brisbane Lions forward line. I cannot wait for that. So we jump to the
Yeah,
next one, over to I think it was a Punt Road, as
it
the
was.
as
Yeah.
the Richmond Tigers beat the Hawks 44-9. I feel a little horrible for the Hawks because they took those big injuries the previous round with Tamara Luke going
Mm,
down. And there was one other injury. I think Lou Stevenson was the other one with a broken ankle. So the Hawks are kind of limping in a little bit, starting to drop a few. And they ran into a buzzsaw of Mon Conti, Grace Egan, and Ellie McKenzie in that midfield of the Richmond Tigers. That was the Tigers team that I expected this year. This absolutely slick midfield. They are going to be a pain. And when they get Miss Brennan back up front, watch out, ladies and gentlemen. This Tigers team can be lethal.
Yeah, they have a probably one of the best midfield teams at the moment. Like you said, Ellie McKenzie, Grace Egan, and the Hosking twins as well. They play beautifully in defence as well as on the wing. Very strong in their tackling as well. Yeah, look, Hawks are, and it was expected, they're having a rough start to the season. Expansion side. Yeah, no, it's just a tough situation, as you know, with the Swans. Probably only one expansion side that's doing well, and that's the Bombers. But there's reasons for that as well. So, but yeah, Mon Conti, God, she's good. And I will say though, Tilly Lucas-Rudd for the Saints definitely held her own out there and racked up a number of disposals. Really did bring it to them when there was moments where it looked like they weren't going to get back. So
yeah, her and Eileen Gilroy were two of the bright spots for the Hawks. Both played very, very well. They did not have bad games at all. Played absolutely fantastic. So, and I honestly, I said in the offseason, I said Grace Egan, I think, may be the best possible pickup for that Richmond midfield because she gives that stabilizing. They can let Ellie McKenzie and Mon Conti do their thing. They can go use their skills, use their slick ball movement, their great ability. Grace Egan's that she'll sit back there. She can be good defensively, but she can do some damage when she gets the ball in her hands as well. So I think that is absolutely an amazing pickup for Richmond. And to see those fruits being bared from that decision, I think is fantastic for the Tigers. And I think they are definitely a team that keep an eye out as this season moves on. As we just kind of discussed, last game of the round, the Bombers, the one and only expansion team that's really having some success, goes out west and has another blisteringly good game, 84-32, a 52-point win out in Mineral Resources Park. They keep defying it, but if you look at some of the names that they brought in over the offseason, it is not much of a stretch to say that this is a very well put together list that maybe, just maybe, could we be talking about the Bombers making finals this year?
Yeah, I absolutely would say they will. Not only did they do well with their recruiting of Bonnie Toogood and Press Parkes, they
Georgie
also
G, Steph Keen.
yeah,
I mean, there's several. Daria Bannister was also another. Like I was sitting here just going, I was naming off the list. I was looking at, I was like, man, they did such a great job, and they got people in just the right places. The only thing that worries me a tiny bit when they play some of the bigger teams is how will that defense stack up, because they're great in the midfield, they're great forward, but down back they're a little inexperienced, shall we say.
Well, look, I think they'll get there. It's been, 3 games. What I will say is that they recruited probably, I think it was about 8 players from their VFLW team who won the grand final undefeated. So, you're bringing in a huge chunk of players they're still very up and about. They're very strong with their skills. They've had a whole season under their belt already. So yes, defensively, I think you're right. It does need a bit more work. They can't rely on their forwards and mids to keep them afloat, especially when you are playing the more experienced teams. It'll be interesting to see, because the Eagles are in a sort of a mid-range side, I would say. So great win, but is it the win that you want to be getting? But yeah, I mean, West Coast are getting there too. Let's not forget about them in this game. They weren't completely lost. Like, yes, it was a big score difference, but again, there were like elements that were quite good. It's just frustrating sometimes, I guess, for sides that have been in it for a while, and then you get sort of run over by this new side. But that sort of, I think, is that's sort of where we are with football skills as well, with the recruiting now. You're recruiting girls that have started from this age, gone all the way through. So that's where that smooth play comes from, and that knowledge and confidence. So, yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah, it'll be fascinating. And the other thing you got to look at it too is this West Coast team took a facelift. There was like 14 new players on this team, so
Mm,
they're it's going to take. They're almost a little bit of a semi quasi expansion team a little bit because they did have so many new players to kind of gel together. So they're going to go through their bumps and bruises. They got a great win over Port Adelaide at the start of the year, and I think some people kind of went, "Whoa." Wasn't expecting
yeah,
that
yeah,
because
yeah.
Port like Essendon was being talked about as being an
Quite
expansion
strong. Yeah.
team that would make some impact, and it's not exactly come together. So that win kind of through, and then they go up to the Gold Coast, and Gold Coast beats them. And
Mm,
the West Coast is kind of that Jekyll and Hyde team right now. We're not really sure what we're getting each week, so we'll have to keep an eye out. But again, Essendon, it's scary to watch that team play. It'll be fascinating, especially this round. I cannot wait. So we're going to do something a little bit different this episode. The previous episodes we did fill in the blank, but I want to do
hmm.
something a little bit different. I'm going to call this next little section burning questions. So these are some questions I've
All
been
right.
thinking about. And with Sauce's knowledge, I want to see what she thinks on this. So we'll go right into it. First burning question of the round. Should the Crows be worried that they keep playing in close games this season?
Uh, no, I don't think they'll be worried. I think they'll just be confident that they will get those wins. The small scores, I think, of it. For me, I think when you look at the Crows, I think that eggs them on even more. And they've got a bit to prove with losing big players. So I think, yeah, I don't think they'll be too worried.
Yeah, I don't think I don't think they should be worried either. You also got to look at it too. Look at the opponents that they had. I mean, you have Melbourne Demons first round. I mean, you knew that there was a chance they could drop that one, especially first game of the season. You just don't know. Richmond,
Mm,
as we kind of just discussed, Richmond's they're
they're
getting
strong,
better.
yeah.
They're scary. They're scary to think about. And then this North Melbourne team, which is always talent, they have so much talent on it on so many lines.
Mm,
The question is their depth. So the first three games, if you really look at it, you could almost kind of give them a pass on this because you got three pretty good teams. It's not like they've
yeah.
played Port Adelaide, Hawthorn, and Sydney.
Mm,
They played Melbourne, Richmond, North. I mean, that could be
yeah.
three finals teams there that they could have
Absolutely.
played. So getting two tough wins and just falling to Melbourne, I don't think is as big a worry. So we just discussed it. The big win, the great recruiting in the expansion. Essendon, are they the team that has surprised you the most this season?
No, I will be honest and say no because I expected them to do quite well. I got a couple of Bombers fans who I work with, and that they were really disenchanted by the men's season. And I said, watch the VFLW, which they were very keen to do. And then I said, watch this space for the AFLW, and they've been really like, wow, they're actually doing all right. Yeah, they've lost a couple, they've won a few. I'm not surprised just because of the way they've stacked their side. They had a couple of years to do some really well thought out recruiting and thoughts about their side, and I think that's going to pay off.
All right. So if Essendon isn't, who's the team that surprised you the most this season?
That is a good question. I think it's Richmond, if I'm quite honest. Um, they've had a rough start, a little bit shaky as well, trying to gel their side together. So when you've watched them, when I've watched them in the last season and a half, I've been really impressed with how they've gathered it. They don't rely on Katie Brennan as much as they used to.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're an extremely intelligent with the way they use the ball on the field. So I think for me, they're probably the biggest surprise.
All right, I'm gonna throw this one in. It's more of because of the makeup of their team. That's the Western Bulldogs. Because I
Mm-hmm.
was worried losing Bonnie Too Good that what were they going to do going forward? I mean, Nelmore Stalton came in last year, played really, really well. You pick it, you make some moves, and you lose Bonnie Too Good in the expansion. And I went, how are you going to do going forward? And they've been my surprise. They've been a team I thought they'd be close, but I think they just fall short of the finals. And as we said, I mean, Christy Lamb, Ellie Blackburn,
Mm.
wow, they have been fantastic. And Elite and Alice Edmonds in the ruck
Yeah,
has
she's
let
been.
Celine Moody go forward, and I think that has been kind of your saving grace a little bit. So I think the Western Bulldogs have been my surprise because 3-0 I wasn't fully expecting. Again,
No, me either. Me either.
I think well, and I also look at it too is you play a Fremantle team that if you would have looked on paper no injuries. The Antonio
Yeah.
still healthy. Kira Bowers at her top power. This win, if you look at that on paper, is a surprise. But if you look at it the way it turned out, with both Antonios being injured, Kira Bauer still
Mm.
kind of fully recovering from COVID, it's kind of been that perfect storm for the Western Bulldogs. They're 3-0. They've won 3 games. They've played some tough opponents. They've gotten wins. So I'm excited to see this Doggies team grow because they're still young. There's still a lot of young talent on this team that still needs to grow. So I'm looking forward to watching this Doggies team grow. So they have been my surprise this year. We've kind of teased it a little bit. For the next burning question, is the winner of the D's Lions going to be your flag favorite going forward?
That's a good question. And I think it's a solid thought as well. I still think, yeah, it's hard because those teams are very neck and neck, and when one wins, the other wins next. Like, I just don't know. I think the Lions would be in the finals over Melbourne if I had to pick right now. So my answer is inconclusive, but leaning towards the Lions.
Well, I'll state it like this. This is how I thought of it when I thought of this question. If the Lions beat the D's, it is hard not to argue that they are not the favorite for the flag, because they'll have beaten the team that beat the other top flag team. And if you
Yeah.
do it impressively, and if you do it at Casey Field, how impressive is that? Considering Casey Field has been such this, I mean, fortress for the
Yes.
D's, that if, and the Brisbane has gone down there several times and just can't buy a win. So if they can go down, get a big win down at
Mm-hmm.
Casey Field, it's hard not to argue that they don't have themselves a nice little run to the finals. And the best part is that if these teams finish 1, 2, 3, which I think some of us are kind of expecting, if you're one, you don't get the other two until you meet one in the grand final.
Yeah, later. Yeah.
You avoid that matchup, a lot like last year.
Mm.
Adelaide finishes first. That makes Melbourne and Brisbane have to play each other in the preliminary final instead of seeing them in the granny. So I think whoever wins this may have the easier road to the grand final, because they won't have to see either of Adelaide or whichever falls, because they might not have to see them until the grand final. So I think they
Yeah,
are the
true.
flag favorite because they'll have a little bit easier road. No disrespect to Collingwood, no disrespect to North, anything like that, but
No, no, no.
it is hard not to say that those 3 teams, again, they've put themselves in a little bit of their own little bracket. And then you've got your Collingwood, your North, what was Fremantle. Now you can almost substitute a Western Bulldogs in there, or an Essendon Bombers potentially as your second tier, just
Absolutely.
below
Yeah.
those top 3. So I'll be
Yeah.
fascinated to see that. So I love this question because I have several players that I have to watch. So who is the one player that you have to watch so far this season?
Oh, that's a really good question. Who I have to watch? Who I
Who's the one player, even if they're playing at a random time, that you have to watch the
mm,
game because you have to watch them play? If you want, I'll go first.
um
I'll let you think real quickly. Mine's
yeah,
Mon Conti. I
yeah.
cannot not watch the Richmond Tigers and watch her. She is absolutely fantastic. She's so silky, so smooth with the footy, so calm and collected. Whenever the Tigers, I have to watch the Tigers games because I have to watch Mon Conti work, because I feel honored to be able to watch her play footy.
Oh, that's awesome. Look, for me, and that's just from a coach and being a forward in the past, I love watching Bonnie Too Good. I think
Mm-hmm.
I really soak in how she maneuvers on the field and her kicking style as well. So probably, yeah, Bonnie. I think she's a phenomenal player.
Absolutely, another good one. And I also love watching Chelsea Randall from the Adelaide Crows. If I have to pick a defender, like I picked a mid, you picked a
Yeah,
forward.
yeah.
Chelsea Randall is so much fun to watch because she attacks the footy so well, and then she's really
Mm,
good at getting it to her strengths. Add the Anne Hatchards, the Ebony Marinoffs in the middle. So it is
yeah.
hard not to watch Chelsea play the way she does. Absolutely fantastic footballer. So that's the end of my burning questions. I loved that. I thought that was absolutely fantastic. So as I was telling you pre-podcast, that I started doing
Mm-hmm.
team of the round for the women, because
Yeah.
I do it for the men, and I wanted the challenge of being able to do this because I think I not only am I like being equal because I do the men's, I
Yes.
do the women. So I thought, all right, why can't I do the women? So here is my team of the round. I'd love to hear what you think. As a coach up here, I love starting with defender. So here are my team of the round players. Starting in defense, the Collingwood's Jordan Allen,
Mm-hmm.
Brisbane's Phoebe Monahan,
Yep.
Carlton's Carrie Peterson, Richmond's Eiley Sharon, and West Coast's Emma Swanson. All great performances. Elise Sharon, wow, was she fantastic in that Richmond game. She was everywhere on that halfback line. Absolutely loved watching her play. So, and I just absolutely love that
Yeah.
group. They all played so
Unstoppable.
well. And when you can slip up as a defender and kick a goal like Karen Peterson did, you get a little love from my team of the week. We'll go to the Ruck. Adelaide's Caitlin Gould had an incredible game for the Crows, being able to give the Crows as much first touch of the footy. So I got to give her a little love on that one. To the
Yeah.
midfield. And as I stated earlier, this was so hard because there were so many great performances. Think about this midfield playing in a game. Adelaide's Eb Marinoff, Brisbane's
Yep.
Alexander Anderson, Richmond's Grace Egan, Richmond's Mon Conti, and Essendon's Maddie Persparkis. Wow. What incredible
Unstoppable.
games. Oh, yeah. Mon Conti, 3 goals. Grace Egan had a goal. Maddie Persparkis had 2 goals. Ebony Marinoff
Yeah.
had something like 27 or 28 disposals. Alexander Anderson had 28 disposals and a goal. It was insane the numbers that some of these midfielders put up. So it tested me trying to put together a 5 group that I thought worked really, really well. So that was there. Jump to the forwards. Adelaide's Danielle Ponter, GWS's
Mm-hmm.
Nicola Barr, Brisbane's Greta Bodie, Brisbane's Jess Wardlaw, and Essendon's Paige Scott are my
Yes.
forwards as the starters. And then we jump to the bench. Now, how I do my bench is just like the women here, 5 on the bench. I do a
Mm-hmm.
defender, a ruck, a midfielder, a forward, and then what I call a utility, a player that I think I need to have in here no matter what position. So my defender is GWS's Emily Pease. She kicked a goal for GWS, so I give her a little bit of love there. The
Yep.
ruck, Essendon Stephanie Wales. I believe she kicked 3 goals in this game, primarily plays the ruck, so she'll be my ruck off the bench. Midfielder Alice Parker. I mean, when you put up the numbers that she did against Sydney, hard not to get her in there. Essendon's Daria Bannister. Again, I think there was 3 players in the Essendon game that had at least 2 goals. And then my utility is Christy Lamb because she was everywhere in that game. She was getting disposal after disposal after clearance after disposal. So had to get her in. So that is my 21. So really
Ooh.
quickly, as a coach, what do you think? Because I tend to try to do good statistics, but I'm scoreboard impact tends to be a thing that helps me put slot players into that team.
I think it's a very strong side. You'd be hard pressed to get through the wall of midfielders even to get to the defense. You know, like it's yeah, well played. And again, I think the hardest part would to pick is that mid because they're the most busiest players on the field.
Mm-hmm.
There's quite a pool of talent in the AFLW to choose from.
Yeah.
No, well played.
Yep. So you see my dilemma there, how I couldn't get
Mm,
Hannah Ewings in because when you have
I
Ed
do,
Marinoff,
yeah.
Alexandria Anderson, Grace Egan, Mon Conti, Maddie Prasparkas, that's just the starting 5.
It's
And
just
then
yeah.
yeah, and then Christy Lamb and Alice Parker are your 2 bench
Mm,
midfielders. Like I sat there going, I just can't get Hannah in because there were so many great performances. So all due respect to Hannah, and she had an incredible game, but some of those others were just a
next time,
little
next time.
stronger. Well, I know, and there's
Yeah.
definitely an opportunity for her. And again, I do each one for the round, and then I'll do an all
Mm-hmm.
Australian. So hopefully she gets a chance. She has that great game to get her in. So we go from that. So as I do with the men's as well, I like letting a few weeks marinate before I do my power rankings because as in the
Okay.
men's, because it's 22, I do the first 5 rounds. I want to get a little bit of what I'm seeing. So since the women's unfortunately is a little bit shorter with only 10 rounds,
Yeah.
again, I don't like it, but it's the world we live in. So we're 3 rounds in, so we're a quarter of the way through. So I have my power rankings. So here are my power rankings for the AFLW as of round 3. We'll start at the bottom. Number 5, 5-1. Number 5, the Adelaide Crows. That loss early in the season, and again, some tight games early, I
Mm,
think, has put them down. Number 4, the Western Bulldogs.
yep.
Been one of my surprise teams. undefeated, still playing solid. I love what they're doing. Cannot wait to see them coming on. Number 3, Collingwood Magpies. You're winning tough, you're winning good games, but they're just so solid. They're so deep, hard not to argue there. Number
Yeah.
2,
Yep.
Melbourne Demons. Such a good team, so solid everywhere. Number 1, Brisbane Lions. You're putting up points. You're doing really well defensively. Hard not to have you there. So that is my top 5 power rankings
Awesome.
for this route through 3 rounds of AFLW. So thoughts, Sasha?
Solid again. The fifth one's probably it's the hardest power rank to choose, I would assume. I'd almost put the Bombers in there just because they are getting there
Yeah.
almost. But in general,
exactly.
Yeah.
And it's still early in the season. Like if you went through I was looking at the ladder because I sometimes the ladder is a good indicator, and sometimes, especially with the men's, I go on form because after the first 5 games I go, okay, who's got the most wins in a row, so on and so forth. So I was looking at the ladder before I started this power rankings, and I went, whoa, okay, I forgot Adelaide is currently in the 8th spot. Like I'm sitting here going,
yeah, it's crazy to look
keep
at it that way.
keep forgetting about it. And it's like in the top 4, it's hard not to Brisbane, Collingwood, Melbourne, Western Bulldogs. The percentage is the only thing separating. They're all 3-0, all 3 undefeated. And then, as you said, I mean, you could argue Essendon should be that 5th place because they're technically 6th. Cats 5th, Essendon 6th, St Kilda 7th, Adelaide Crows 8th. It just shows you right now percentage is huge. Again, we're still really early in the season. There's only 3 games.
But isn't Brisbane's percentage, is that a crazy
401%
something? Yeah.
401. The percent, every single percentage in the top 8 is over 100. 401 for the Brisbane Lions, 223.3 for Collingwood, 165.7 for Melbourne, 146 for the Western Bulldogs, 196.3 for the Geelong Cats, 184.6 for the Essendon Bombers, 167.5 for the St Kilda Saints, and 105.7 for the Adelaide Crows, with Carlton in 9th, 81.9, and the Richmond Tigers in 10th, 136.7, 2 points back. That draw right now is helping Carlton be up just the littlest bit. So again, it's still very early. I think that percentage for Brisbane may take a hit this round, depending on how that goes against the Melbourne Demons. So it's gonna equal out a little bit. We're gonna see some fluctuation, but it's a very fascinating ladder right now with Adelaide in 8th, because if we started the finals now, if I remember correctly, Adelaide and Brisbane would play each other in the first round, because there's no eliminate. They basically do a bracket style 1-8, 2-7. I think, I don't know. I have to double check that, but I'm pretty sure they're not doing the eliminator like crossover. They're just doing straight up bracket 8-1, 2-7, 3-6, 4-5, and then it's bracket to the final. So, and if that happens, it's a crazy first round game of Adelaide versus Brisbane. I know it's not the way it's going to be, but I had to chuckle about that a little bit when I first looked at that you would have a first round match of Adelaide versus Brisbane to start that off. So alrighty, we've come to it. We get to the tips. The most difficult part of this is we have to choose who we think is going to win. And I have to say, I've been doing pretty well. I think last time I looked, I have done pretty well. Again, the one of the groups that I'm in, the tips, when it is a draw, they count it as a plus for you. So I was actually 9-0 last week. I got all of them right because the draw was nice to me.
I know, yeah.
But I got all the other 8 ones right. So I had to give myself some kudos for calling a few of those. So let's jump right into it. First game. We're getting close to it, down at UTAS Stadium, North Melbourne versus Geelong, the fortress that is Tasmania for the North Melbourne Tasmania Roos. Cats, who do you like?
I think the Roos will win, but not by a lot, to be honest. I think that Tassie sort of style of football will come out. But again, interesting to see. I think it'll be a close one.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one. I think the Cats will keep it close. Roos just have just a tiny bit more talent. Jazzy Gardner, Emma Carney, some of those superstars, I think, will just have a little bit too much.
Mm,
But again, you can't deny Georgie Prasparkas and Nina Morrison can always find a way to
yeah.
light that midfield up. So it'll be absolutely fascinating to see that matchup with Jazzy Gardner. That'll be fun. Jump back up to Giant Stadium as the GWS Giants host the West Coast Eagles. I have the Giants in this one. The Jekyll and Hyde of the West Coast plus the travel east, I think will get them a little bit. And plus the Giants were humming in that game against Sydney. I think there's a lot of confidence there. I have the Giants in this one.
Yeah, so do I, Donnie. I just think it's sort of a no-brainer. If West Coast come out and win, I'll eat my words. But GWS are strong at the moment, and it's a home ground advantage. They're chilling. They've got a great side after the 65 points on the board, so I don't see why they wouldn't continue that.
Yeah, but again, I kind of look at it and go, nothing surprises me anymore, even in the AFLW.
Mm,
Nothing
yeah, very
surprises
true.
me. So even if West Coast win it, I'm not gonna go, "Oh, I didn't see that. No, it's the way this season is gone. So we jump up to the Great Barrier Reef Arena as Gold Coast, your beloved Suns,
Mm.
host the St. Kilda Saints. I what do we think on this one?
Look, I think the Suns will give it a good run. I'm going to go with them mainly just because they're used to the conditions of Queensland weather. Also, they're doing okay. They had a pretty big loss last weekend. I don't think they'll be wanting to do that again. Saints can be strong, but again, I think travel and yeah, I'm just going to go with the Suns. That's all. Yeah.
I'm gonna go with the Saints on this one only because I'm worried that a lot of confidence could have been sapped out of them in that Brisbane Lions game. I agree with you. Being up in Queensland, I think we'll even this game out. Um, Kate Sheilor and Greiser are an absolute animal to try to have to defend. So if
Mm,
one of them gets loose, I think it could be a long day. So can they find a way to kind of stifle delivery to them? I'm just worried that with Georgia Patrikios and the way their midfield has been going for St. Kilda, I'm just a little bit worried that might be a little bit of an issue. So I'm going to tip the Saints in this one, but I think this is
mm-hmm.
close. I think this is a really
Yeah.
good game. We jump over to Alberton Oval, where from your team to my team, Port Adelaide versus Sydney at Alberton Oval. Uh,
Mm,
one of these two expansion teams is going to get their first win of the season, and as confident as I am, as confident as I want to be for the Swans, I think Port's just got a little too much. If I knew Montana Ham was going to play, I'd be a little bit more leaning more towards Sydney a little bit because I think she could be an X factor. But I'm just a tiny bit worried that the overall talent is there even without Gemma Houghton. Aaron Phillips is on the field. It's hard to tip against her, especially in a game like this. So
yeah.
I'm going to tip Port in this one. But like I said, if Montana Ham's in this one, I think this is very, very close.
Yeah, look, I'm yeah, sorry, but I will go Port just because Alberton, I know they've lost recently there, but they won't want to do it again so soon. Um, Also, they've come off that draw, which is a strong indication that they're getting in form. So,
Yeah. Now you're not going to hurt my feelings.
yeah.
All right. We jump out to what I think is the most intriguing game besides the heavy hitter at the end. And that's Fremantle at home, Fremantle Oval versus Carlton. This is a tricky one for me. I've bounced back and forth. Who do you like in this one?
I think Frio. Um, I My reasons mainly, again, yeah, Carlton showed strong signs on the weekend against Port, but they're sort of still a bit rocky. And I think traveling over to Frio after Frio have had a loss, it'll be a tough slog. And I think perhaps it will be a close one, but I'm going to think Frio just by a little bit.
All right, I'm with you. I have Fremantle, but I think on it's going to be just for the tiniest differences. Honestly, I think the Carlton draw is a negative for Carlton
Mm,
because you drew, and again, this is no disrespect to Port Adelaide, you drew with an expansion side. If you take Mim Hill and all of the strength that Carlton does have with experienced players, you weren't expecting that draw.
no,
So
no.
I think in some situations it can almost be a negative because you drew with a team that honestly you should have beaten again. I say should, the way this
Yeah,
AFLW season has been, as soon as you think you know, you have no clue. So
yeah.
I think Fremantle, I think they're starting to find their rhythm. I think they've kind of gotten over that. I think the injury issues at the start of the season kind of put them behind the eight ball. But Haley Miller and Anya Tag and that team, I think they're starting to get
They're
their
on,
groove.
yeah.
They played really well against the Western Bulldogs, who I think is definitely a finals team. I think Carleton is still a step below that. So I like Fremantle in this one, especially at home. They play Fremantle Oval really, really well. So we jump to the Box Hill Oval as the Hawthorne Hawks take on the Western Bulldogs. I think this is the Bulldogs win. And I think this could be ugly if the Duggies can get going.
Yeah, I again agree with you. The Doggies definitely will win, and I think they'll win by quite a lot. Regardless of being in Box Hill or not. They're too strong. Beck Goddard's doing a good job with the Hawks, but it's going to take time, and they're not there yet.
Yeah, and unfortunately, like I said, the injuries are hurting them because they were key pillars. I mean, Tamara Luke was somebody they were looking at big time, and Lucy Stevens.
That's the
both
loss.
They're big losses. Unfortunately, they couldn't afford to lose. The only thing that would have been worse is losing Tilly Lucas Rod. Would be the only one that would have been worse. Only one that would have been worse. We jumped to Victoria Park, and I think an absolute cracker. This also could be game of the round. Collingwood at home versus the Crows. I'm going to tip the Crowies in this one, but I am not confident in this one because Collingwood play Victoria Park so well. I think they're starting to kind of find their way. Again, they don't have Bree Davy. They don't have Britt Benici, but they're starting to build some depth in that midfield. They could be scary next season when you add those two superstars back into this list of young, hungry midfielders that I think are playing quite well. I'm going to tip the Crowies, but it will not shock me if Collingwood pull the upset here.
Yeah, I'm going to go the other way and say, I think Collingwood will win. I think they're going to come out extremely strong and probably hit the board early, which will probably get the Crows on the back foot. That's my prediction for that one.
And I could completely see that because sometimes with the Crows, I think that's what the Duggies did last year in that win in Norwood is if you can jump the Crows and get them behind 2 or 3 goals, they kind of start getting happy feet, and then they start to rush things, and then they lose their structure a little bit. That really happened a lot last year. So that's going to be a cracker. Cannot wait for that one. I mean, and then we go from great game to great game to great game. I love these final 3. They're going to be fantastic to watch. Dreamtime, Essendon, Richmond, ETU Stadium. I'm this is another one. I bounce back and forth a couple of times on this tip. So I want to know how do you see this one playing out?
I'm picking Essendon, but I'm like you in the early. I'm not 100% confident on that decision. But I think, it's a really great venue. It's Indigenous round for them. I think it'll be a cracker, and it'll probably sell out, to be honest. But I'm going Bombers, but not by a mile.
See, and I'm one of those. I think with the midfield that Richmond has, I'm worried. Maddie Prasparkas is a great player, but when you have a 3-headed monster of Ellie McKenzie, Grace Egan, and Mon Conti, she's going to have herself an adventure with those 3. And I want to know, I really wish I could have this tip knowing, does Katie Brennan play? If Katie Brennan plays, again, it's a foot injury. It's like, they're like, she's a week away. Well, that was 3 weeks ago. So we'll have to see if she plays. This could be a fun one for that Essendon defense, because her and Courtney Wakefield are a 2-headed monster that if they get the service could be a long day for the Bombers. I'm going to go Richmond Tigers on this one. I just think that midfield, Maddie's going to have a lot more issues with them.
No, they'll definitely be tagging her. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Sure. I think Grace Egan might get that job, which I think would be fun to watch that matchup. So I'm going to tip Richmond in this one. I just think the depth and the experience, I think, is going to be just a little bit too much for an Essendon team. Again, it's still kind of gelling. They've won on talent some of these games. This is a game you may have to win by structure, which I think Richmond may have just a little bit more. But this is going to be a cracker. Cannot wait for this one. And then the coup d'etat, Casey Fields, Melbourne, Brisbane. I know Taylor Harris is out. I know Jordan Ivy's out. But I just think this is a Melbourne team that they have this next woman up type of thought process. This is a really good defensive team. Brisbane really hasn't faced really good defense yet. So can they score against this Libby Birch base team. I'm going to tip Melbourne on this one, but I'm a little worried that if Brisbane get going, this could be a long day. But Casey Fields, I think, does kind of turn this game a little bit more in Melbourne's favor than if they were to have moved it to Marvel.
Yeah, I am leaning towards Melbourne, but it's a tough one. But I'm looking. It's 90% chance of rain. Casey Fields is out in the sticks. The wind there is insane. If it is a really bad weather day, it'll be a low scorer anyway. And I think Melbourne will be better skill-wise with that because they're used to those conditions. So,
Well,
yeah, but again,
it could be a little bit of, if you get rain, it could be a little bit more of a physical game, which I don't think suits the Lions very much. They're a very slick ball movement team.
Yeah.
Melbourne can kind of sometimes be that gritty, just chaos footy type of team that they don't mind the ground balls. They don't mind the physicality. I mean, Lily Mithen in the middle, Liza West is playing really well. Karen Paxman. I mean, you've got some really good midfielders there that Brisbane's going to have to deal with that they can play a little more physical, where your Jade Ellinger, some of your smaller Brisbane midfielders, they may have a little bit of trouble come if the weather gets interesting. So I feel a little more confident with that weather forecast a little bit, but this is a coin flip. It really is. It's Casey and the physicality of Melbourne that is the reason that I'm tipping them, but I still think this is going to be an incredible game.
Agreed.
All right. So then that will do it. That is it for the 9 games. And boy, do we get a nice little slate there. I get the preliminary finals for the men, which is fantastic. But this women's slate is absolutely fantastic. There is not a bad game. If you really look at it.
No, there's a lot to watch. Yeah, a lot of games to pick from as well. So.
Yeah, so it just gives me 11 games of footy to watch this weekend, which I'm thoroughly looking forward to. So I'm going to be footied out, and the crazy part is my team actually plays as well. I have a game on Saturday.
Amazing.
Yeah, Saturday as well. So it is a weekend of footy for me. So I am thoroughly looking forward to it. So Sasha, this has been another absolutely awesome chat with you. It is so great. Like I told you at the start of the episode, having Chicks Talking Footy back on my podcast is absolutely amazing. So please relay it to the ladies. I am loving the podcast.
I will.
It's absolutely fantastic. Keep up the great work. And if you ever need an emergency American sub to hop in as an honorary chick, please feel free to reach out. I'd love to sit there and talk footy with you ladies.
Thank you. We have a blast and we're really enjoying being back. It's been really fun.
Oh, it's been awesome. I've loved every episode. In fact, I'll give you audience members. I had to chat with Sasha about a chat that they had earlier during the qualifying finals. They were talking about Alex Neil Bullen and his lovely expenditure of himself onto the field, and we had a nice little fun discussion on their podcast that had me giggling in my work area as I listened to it. So I had to compliment her and the ladies on that stellar conversation. It had me chuckling for sure. So
oh, good. That's what we aim to do.
All righty. So that is going to do it, ladies and gentlemen, for our podcast. Again, keep an eye out on it. We have another round coming up again. A fantastic round 3 is just come. Round 4 is up. We cannot wait for it. So we will be back again next week. Sasha, stay awesome down there in Melbourne.
Will do.
And we will talk again very soon.
And good luck to the Swannies.
I hope so. It's very interesting that the nerves are fascinating up here for me, for sure. So, all righty, ladies and gentlemen, this has been another AFLW round review. We will be back again very soon.